The stars looked different from inside the Discovery. Jake Morrison stood near the large window in the main corridor, watching the darkness of space stretch endlessly before him. He had been in space for 3 years now, but the view never got old. As the chief security officer of the research vessel, Jake spent most of his time making sure the crew stayed safe. Today, that job was about to get a lot harder. Captain Lauren Hayes called everyone to the main conference room. Her voice over the intercom sounded calm, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. Something big was happening. He left the window and walked quickly through the metal corridors, his boots making soft thuds against the floor. When Jake entered the conference room, most of the senior staff were already there. Dr. Peter Klein, the science officer, sat nervously adjusting his glasses. Sophie Grant, the navigator, gave Jake a quick smile. She was one of his closest friends on the ship. They had gone through a lot together during their time in space. Captain Hayes stood at the head of the table. Behind her, a large screen showed an image of a ship, but it was unlike any human ship Jake had ever seen. The vessel looked like it was made of crystal and metal combined, with strange curves that seemed to bend light around them. "We've made first contact," Captain Hayes said simply. The room went silent. Everyone knew this moment would come someday, but knowing something and experiencing it are two different things. They call themselves the Veteran. Their ship approached us 6 hours ago. They've been peaceful so far and want to meet face to face. Jake leaned forward in his chair. "What do we know about them?" Dr. Klein pulled up more images on the screen. They're tall, approximately 3 meters in height. Their communication is complex, using both sounds and something else we're still trying to understand. They seem to have technology far beyond ours, especially in one area. He paused, looking uncomfortable. "They can control gravity." Sophie whistled softly. "Control gravity? Like they can make things heavier or lighter?" "Exactly," Dr. Klein confirmed. "Our sensors picked up gravitational fluctuations around their ship. They can create gravity fields, manipulate them, change their strength. We've never seen anything like it." Captain Hayes crossed her arms. "They want to come aboard in 2 hours. Earth Command has ordered us to cooperate fully. This is the most important moment in human history. We need to make a good impression." Jake didn't like it. Something in his gut told him to be careful. He had learned to trust that feeling during his time as a Marine, fighting in the conflicts near the asteroid belt. "Captain, with respect, we should be cautious. We know nothing about their intentions." "I understand your concern, Jake," Captain Hayes replied, "but we have our orders. However, I want you and your security team ready. Nothing aggressive, but stay alert." The next 2 hours passed quickly. Jake positioned his team throughout the docking bay and the corridors leading to the conference room. He made sure everyone understood. Watch everything, but don't provoke anything. They were dealing with beings who had technology that could probably destroy the Discovery in seconds. When the Veteran arrived, Jake understood why Dr. Klein had seemed so nervous. The aliens were massive. Their leader, who introduced himself as Archon Velmoth, had to duck slightly to fit through the doorway even though it was built tall for equipment transport. His skin looked like living crystal, reflecting the lights in rainbow patterns. Behind him, 4 more Veteran followed, each just as imposing. But it wasn't their size that bothered Jake. It was the way they moved, the way they positioned themselves. Every Veteran stood while the humans sat. They towered over the conference table, looking down at everyone. Jake remained standing near the wall, watching. Archon Velmoth spoke, and a translation device converted his words into English. His voice was deep and resonant. "We greet humanity. We have watched your species for some time now. You have recently begun to explore beyond your world. This is good. The galaxy has many wonders." Captain Hayes smiled diplomatically. "We're honored to meet you. Humanity has hoped for this moment for generations." "Yes," Velmoth continued. "Hope is common among young species. We have guided many civilizations as they join the greater community. The Veteran Empire spans many worlds and includes dozens of species. We believe in order, in hierarchy, in understanding one's place." Jake's eyes narrowed. He didn't like where this was going. Dr. Klein asked questions about Veteran technology and culture. The answers were polite but vague. Then Velmoth began explaining something he called the hierarchy of worth. According to him, every species had a natural rank based on their abilities and strengths. The Veteran measured this primarily through resistance to gravitational pressure. Your species evolved on a world with one standard gravity. Velmoth said, gesturing around the room. This is quite low. Most advanced species come from worlds with higher gravity. It makes them stronger, more resilient. The ability to withstand pressure is a sign of quality. Sophie shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Jake could see other crew members exchanging glances. The Veteran were basically calling humans weak. Captain Hayes maintained her composure. Every species has different strengths. Humans have achieved remarkable things. Of course, Velmoth agreed, but his tone suggested he didn't really believe it. All species have value. Some lead, others follow. Some command, others serve. This is natural order. In the Veteran Empire, everyone has their appropriate role. Jake felt his jaw tighten. He had read enough history books to know what appropriate role usually meant when powerful beings talked about weaker ones. The meeting continued for another hour. The Veteran asked many questions about Earth, human population, resources, and military capabilities. They shared almost nothing about themselves except their philosophy about hierarchy and strength. As the meeting ended, Archon Velmoth made an announcement. Tomorrow we will conduct a demonstration. A simple evaluation to help us understand humanity's potential. It is standard procedure for all new species we encounter. Your Captain Hayes has agreed. Jake looked at the captain. She nodded slightly, though her expression was tight. Earth Command must have ordered her to agree. After the Veteran left, the senior staff remained in the conference room. Jake spoke first. Captain, this is a bad idea. They're testing us like we're animals at a zoo. I know how it looks, Captain Hayes said tiredly. But we have no choice. Earth wants this contact to succeed. We need to see what they want from us. Dr. Klein was studying his tablet, reviewing the sensor data from the meeting. Captain, there's something you should know. While the Veteran were here, they were manipulating the gravity in this room. Nothing extreme, but they increased it by about 5%. I think they were testing us without us even knowing. The room went cold. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. The Veteran hadn't just been talking down to humanity. They had been literally pushing down on everyone in the room, seeing how they would react. They're not here to be friends, Jake said quietly. They're here to see if we'll make good servants. Captain Hayes looked at him for a long moment. Maybe you're right, but we still have to go through with their tests tomorrow. Just be ready, Jake. I have a feeling things might get complicated. Jake nodded. He would be ready. Whatever the Veteran had planned, humanity wasn't going to just roll over and accept it. He had stood up to bullets and bombs in the Belt Wars. He could handle some arrogant aliens. As he left the conference room, Sophie caught up with him. You thinking what I'm thinking? She asked. That this is going to go sideways fast? Jake replied. Exactly. These Veteran, they don't see us as equals. They see us as something to be ranked and filed away. Jake looked at his friend. Then we'll just have to show them they're wrong about us. Sophie smiled, but there was worry in her eyes. Just don't do anything too crazy, okay? Jake didn't answer. He was already thinking about tomorrow, about the test, about what it would mean if humanity failed. But failure wasn't an option. It never had been. The Discovery continued its path through space, carrying humans and aliens toward a confrontation that would define humanity's place among the stars. In his quarters, Jake checked his equipment and prepared himself mentally. The Veteran wanted to test human strength. They were about to learn that strength comes in many forms, and the most dangerous kind is the strength to stand up when everyone expects you to kneel. Morning came too quickly aboard the Discovery. Jake had barely slept, spending most of the night running through scenarios in his head. He stood in the shower longer than usual, letting the hot water ease the tension in his muscles. Whatever happened today, he needed to be ready. The cargo bay had been transformed overnight. When Jake arrived, he found a circular area in the center surrounded by strange devices. The Veteran had brought their own equipment and set it up while most of the crew slept. The devices hummed with energy, creating a faint shimmer in the air above the circle. Dr. Klein was already there with his scanning equipment, taking readings. He looked even more worried than yesterday. Jake, these are gravitational field generators. Very sophisticated ones. They can increase the gravity in that circle to extreme levels. How extreme? Jake asked. Potentially lethal. Dr. Klein answered quietly. If they wanted to, they could crush a human flat in seconds. Jake stared at the circle. It looked innocent enough, just an empty space on the metal floor. But now it felt like a trap waiting to spring shut. Around the bay, his security team had positioned themselves carefully. They wore sidearms, but Jake had given strict orders. Weapons stay holstered unless he gave the command. Starting a firefight with technologically superior aliens would only end one way. Captain Hayes entered with the senior staff. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Behind her came the Veteran delegation, led by Archon Velmoth. The alien seemed even taller in the cargo bay, his crystalline skin catching the harsh industrial lighting. "Good morning," Velmoth said through his translator. "Today we perform a standard evaluation. Nothing harmful, simply a measurement of capability. We do this with all new species. It helps us understand where you fit in the galactic community." Jake noticed how Velmoth phrased everything. Not if you fit, but where you fit. Like it was already decided that humans would be part of their empire. Captain Hayes stepped forward. "What exactly does this evaluation involve?" Velmoth gestured to the circle. "Simple physical tasks performed under increasing gravitational pressure. We begin at your normal 1 gravity and slowly increase. The subject attempts to complete basic actions: walking, standing, lifting objects. We measure their breaking point." "Breaking point," Sophie repeated from beside Jake. She had volunteered for the test before anyone else could. Jake had tried to talk her out of it, but Sophie was stubborn. She wanted to show the Veteran that human women were just as capable as men. "Do not worry," Velmoth said, somehow making it sound more threatening than reassuring. "We will stop before permanent damage occurs, usually." That last word hung in the air like a threat. Sophie walked to the circle. She wore her standard uniform, comfortable boots, and her hair tied back. She looked small in the large cargo bay, especially with the massive Veteran watching her. But her face showed determination. Jake knew that look. He had seen it before during dangerous missions. "I'm ready," Sophie said. The Veteran activated their devices. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Sophie stood in the center of the circle, relaxed. Dr. Klein called out readings from his scanner. 1.2 gravity. 1.5. 2 gravities. Sophie's posture changed slightly. Her knees bent more, her shoulders came forward. But she was still standing comfortably. She had trained in variable gravity environments before. All space personnel did. 2.5 gravities, Dr. Klein announced. Now it was harder. Sophie's breathing became heavier. Each movement looked like it required effort. But she followed Velmoth's instructions, walking from one side of the circle to the other. Her steps were slow but steady. 3 gravities, Sophie stumbled. She caught herself, planted her feet wider. Sweat appeared on her forehead. The weight of her own body had tripled. Every organ, every bone, every muscle was being pulled down with 3 times its normal force. "Walk to the center," Velmoth commanded. Sophie tried. She really tried. But her legs were shaking. Each step was a battle against invisible weight. Halfway to the center, her knee buckled. She caught herself with her hands down on all fours. 3.5 gravities, Dr. Klein said, his voice tight with worry. Sophie couldn't stand. She tried, pushing with her arms, but the weight was too much. She collapsed flat on the floor, gasping for breath. Jake started forward, but Captain Hayes grabbed his arm. "Wait," she whispered. Velmoth watched Sophie struggle for a few more seconds, then gestured. The gravity returned to normal. Sophie lay on the floor, breathing hard. 2 security officers ran to help her up. She waved them off, standing on her own despite her shaking legs. "Adequate," Velmoth pronounced. "Your species can tolerate moderate increases. This places you in the lower range of known species. Approximately 60% of galactic civilizations show better results." The way he said it made it clear that 60% meant humans were inferior. Not just different, but lesser. Sophie limped back to stand with the crew. Jake squeezed her shoulder. She had done well, better than many would have. But it hadn't been enough to impress the Veteran. "Now we demonstrate proper capability," Velmoth announced. One of his subordinates walked into the circle. The Veteran activated the generators again. But this time they increased the gravity much faster. Dr. Klein's scanner jumped from 1 gravity to 5, then 6, then 7. The Veteran stood calmly in the center. At 7 gravities, it walked around easily. At 8, it performed a series of movements that looked like exercises. At 9 gravities, where a human would be crushed into paste, the Veteran simply stood there unaffected. "We evolved on a high-gravity world," Velmoth explained. "It makes us strong. It makes us leaders. Lower gravity species naturally serve in support roles in our empire. This is not cruelty, simply efficiency. Everyone contributes according to their ability." Captain Hayes's face was carefully neutral, but Jake could see anger in her eyes. The Veteran Empire sounds very organized. It is perfect order, Velmoth agreed. And now humanity will join this order. You have demonstrated your level. We will assign appropriate roles. There is no shame in serving those who are stronger. This is the way of the universe. He paused, and then his tone changed slightly. It became harder, more commanding. To show acceptance of your position, your senior officers will now demonstrate proper deference. Sit. It wasn't a request. It was an order. And as Velmoth spoke, Jake felt something change in the room. The air became thicker. His body felt heavier. The Veteran were using their gravity manipulation not just in the circle, but throughout the entire cargo bay. Around him, people began sinking to their knees. Not because they wanted to, but because the gravity was increasing. Captain Hayes tried to stay standing, but her legs gave out. Dr. Klein collapsed. Sophie, already weakened from her test, fell immediately. Jake felt the pressure pushing down on him. His knees wanted to buckle. His spine wanted to compress. Every cell in his body screamed at him to fall, to lie flat on the floor, to submit to the overwhelming force. But Jake had spent years training his body and mind. He had survived combat in zero gravity and in crushing pressure. He had learned to control his breathing, to distribute weight, to find strength in places most people didn't know existed. He shifted his stance, bent his knees slightly, focused on his core, and he stayed standing, Velmoth noticed. The alien's crystalline face turned toward Jake, and something like surprise flickered across it. You, security officer, sit. The gravity increased. Jake felt like an elephant was standing on his shoulders. Blood vessels in his eyes strained. His vision started to darken at the edges, but he didn't fall. Interesting, Velmoth said. He sounded almost amused now. Your body should not withstand this pressure. Yet you remain standing. Perhaps you are defective. The gravity increased again. 4 times Earth normal. People around Jake were pressed flat to the floor. He could hear Captain Hayes trying to give orders, but she couldn't get enough air into her lungs to speak. Dr. Klein's scanner had fallen from his hand, the readings forgotten. Jake's legs shook. Every muscle was on fire. His heart pounded, working overtime to pump blood through his compressed vessels. But some stubborn part of him refused to go down. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was the simple human refusal to accept that anything was impossible. He locked eyes with Velmoth. The alien was still standing easily in the increased gravity, looking down at the struggling human, waiting for Jake to collapse like the others. Instead, Jake took a step forward. It wasn't much. Just one boot sliding forward 6 inches, but it was toward the Veteran, not away. It was advance, not retreat, and it cost Jake everything he had. Velmoth's amusement vanished. His crystalline skin flickered with rapid color changes. The other Veteran showed visible agitation. To them, this was impossible. This weak, low-gravity species should be unconscious by now. Instead, one of them was walking toward their leader. You dare, Velmoth said, his translated voice dropping to a dangerous tone. Jake couldn't speak. He didn't have enough breath. But he took another step. His body was shutting down. He could feel it. But his mind held on to one thought. They will not make me kneel. Archon Velmoth made a decision. He released the gravity field and raised his arm. Sharp, blade-like protrusions extended from his forearm. Natural weapons evolved for combat on a high-gravity world. The message was clear. Jake's body moved on instinct and training. Years of combat experience took over when conscious thought failed. The moment Velmoth extended those blade-like weapons, Jake's exhausted muscles found one last burst of energy. He lunged forward, not away. Most people would have retreated from the threat, but Jake had learned long ago that sometimes the only way out is through. His right hand shot up, catching Velmoth's extended arm and redirecting it past his shoulder. The crystalline blade whistled through the air inches from his face. Jake's left elbow came up hard into what he hoped was a joint or weak point on the alien's arm. The impact sent a shock of pain through Jake's arm, but he heard a satisfying crack. Velmoth's crystalline skin fractured, rainbow light spilling from the crack like liquid glass. The Archon stumbled backward, surprise evident on his alien features. In all his encounters with new species, none had dared to strike him. The other Veteran stood frozen for a critical second, unable to process what was happening. Jake didn't waste the moment. He moved behind Velmoth, wrapping his arm around what passed for the alien's neck. It wasn't a perfect chokehold because the anatomy was all wrong, but it didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to be threatening enough. "Tell your people to back off," Jake growled, his voice hoarse from the gravitational strain he had just endured. He could feel Velmoth's body, harder than human flesh but not invincible. Everything could be hurt if you knew where to press. The cargo bay erupted into chaos. The other 4 Vethran moved forward, their own blade weapons extending. Jake's security team drew their weapons, sidearms appearing in dozens of hands. Human Marines poured through the doorways, responding to the silent alarm Jake had triggered. Captain Hayes struggled to her feet, still shaky from the gravitational pressure. "Everyone stand down," she shouted, but her voice was lost in the confusion. More Vethran began materializing in the bay. They had some kind of teleportation technology, appearing in flashes of light. Within seconds, there were 20 Vethran facing 40 humans. The aliens were individually superior, stronger, and larger, but the humans had numbers and desperation. Jake held on to Velmoth, using the Archon as a shield. The alien leader was struggling now, trying to break free. But Jake had positioned himself well. Despite being smaller and weaker, he had leverage and technique. "The Vethran might be strong, but strength alone doesn't win every fight," I said. "Back off." Jake shouted at the approaching Vethran warriors. They hesitated. Their leader was in danger, something they had probably never experienced before. Dr. Klein, still on his hands and knees, called out weakly. "Jake's sensors show they're charging weapons on their ship. If this escalates, they'll destroy us all." Jake felt sweat pouring down his face. His body was screaming at him, every muscle damaged from the gravitational torture. But he couldn't let go now. If he released Velmoth, the Vethran would crush them all. If he held on, they might destroy the ship anyway. Sophie had made it to her feet, leaning heavily on a support beam. "Jake," she called out. "Whatever you're planning, do it fast." But Jake didn't have a plan. He had instinct and anger. The Vethran had come here pretending to be diplomatic, but really they just wanted to sort humanity into their hierarchy of slaves. They had tested the crew like animals, pushed them down with gravity, and expected everyone to accept their place as inferiors. Jake had never been good at accepting what other people told him he was. Captain Hayes finally reached them, moving carefully between armed humans and Vethran. Her face was pale but determined. She spoke directly to the nearest Vethran warrior, a female with darker crystalline skin. "I am captain of this vessel," Hayes said, her voice steady despite everything. "Tell your warriors to lower their weapons. We will release your Archon, but this has to stop now before it becomes a war neither of us can control." The Vethran warrior looked at Velmoth, still held by Jake. She seemed to be the second in command. Her name translator identified her as Commander Siesh. For a long moment she didn't respond. Then she spoke in their harmonic language. The Vethran lowered their blade weapons slowly. Siesh gestured and they stepped back. But they didn't teleport away or leave the bay. They watched Jake with what could only be described as intense interest. Jake felt Captain Hayes' hand on his shoulder. "Let him go, Commander Morrison." "That's an order." It took effort to release Velmoth. Every instinct told Jake that letting go meant losing the only advantage they had. But he trusted his captain. Slowly, he unwrapped his arm from the Archon's neck and stepped back. Velmoth moved away quickly, his damaged arm held carefully against his body. Crystalline fluid dripped from the crack Jake had made, leaving rainbow drops on the metal floor. The Archon turned to face Jake, his large eyes unreadable. "You attacked me," Velmoth said, his tone somewhere between outrage and confusion. "A lesser being struck a superior. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable." Jake's exhaustion was turning into pure anger now. "You came to our ship. You tested us like we're animals. You tried to force us to submit. And when I didn't kneel, you pulled a weapon. What did you expect me to do?" "I expected you to understand your position." Velmoth's voice rose, the translation barely keeping up with his rapid speech. "Every species has a place in the natural order. The strong lead, the weak follow. This is how the galaxy works. This is how it has always worked." "Maybe that's how it works in your empire," Captain Hayes said, stepping between Jake and the Archon. "But humanity doesn't see things that way. We don't believe in natural hierarchies or predetermined positions. Every human has worth regardless of strength." Velmoth's skin flickered through several colors rapidly. "Impossible philosophy. Without order there is only chaos. We call it freedom, Sophie said, having limped closer. The freedom to be more than what someone else decides we are. Sayesh, the veteran second in command, spoke for the first time and translated English. The human stood under gravity that should have killed him. Then he attacked Archon Velmoth and survived. This is unprecedented. Because I got lucky, Jake said, still breathing hard. Because I've trained in high-pressure environments. Because I was too stubborn to fall down. Not because I'm special. But you are special, Sayesh insisted. Your species is special. We have never encountered a race that combines such physical limitation with such aggressive refusal to accept limitation. You should have submitted. Instead, you fought. Velmoth was examining his damaged arm, his expression dark. This changes nothing. Humanity is still weak by galactic standards. One individual's resistance does not redefine an entire species. Maybe not, Captain Hayes agreed, but it should tell you something about us. You can push humans down, but we'll get back up. You can tell us our place, but we'll decide that for ourselves. If your empire is built on forcing others to submit, then humanity will never fit into it. The cargo bay fell silent. Humans and Veteran watched each other across the open space. The tension was still there like electricity in the air. One wrong move could still trigger violence that would doom Earth. Dr. Klein broke the silence, his scientist mind unable to stay quiet. Archon Velmoth, may I ask a question? What happens to species that refuse to join your hierarchy? Velmoth looked at him. They exist outside the Empire, alone, without the benefits of our technology, our protection, our trade networks. Most choose to join eventually. The galaxy is dangerous for isolated species. Sounds like a threat, Jake muttered. It is reality, Velmoth countered. There are predator species in the galaxy worse than us. Pirates, parasites, beings that would exterminate humanity without thought. The Veteran Empire provides safety through strength. Captain Hayes considered this. And the cost of that safety is submission. The cost is understanding one's role, Velmoth corrected. Not all roles are unpleasant. Lesser gravity species often excel at detailed work, at tasks requiring precision rather than strength. They are valued. As servants, Sophie said flatly. As workers doing jobs the high-gravity species don't want to do. Velmoth's silence was confirmation enough. Jake felt his anger settling into something colder and more focused. The Veteran weren't evil exactly. They genuinely believed in their hierarchy. They thought they were offering humanity something valuable. But their offer was still a cage, just a comfortable one. We need to report this to Earth, Captain Hayes said to her crew. This is beyond my authority to decide. She turned to Velmoth. Your delegation should return to your ship. We need time to consider what's happened here. There is nothing to consider, Velmoth said. Your species will join the Empire as all species do. Today's unfortunate incident will be overlooked if your government shows proper respect going forward. Jake laughed, a harsh sound. You really don't get it, do you? You almost started a war today because you couldn't imagine someone standing up to you. What do you think will happen when Earth hears about this? Velmoth looked at Jake for a long moment. The Archon's crystalline skin had settled into a deep purple color. What I think, human, is that your species does not understand how small you are, how vast the galaxy is, how many threats exist beyond your limited experience. You may have stood against me today, but you cannot stand against everything out there. Watch us, Jake said simply. The Veteran delegation teleported away in flashes of light. The news spread through human space like wildfire. Within hours of the incident, every major news network on Earth was broadcasting the story. Video footage from the cargo bay cameras showed everything. The gravity test, Jake's defiance, the confrontation with Archon Velmoth. Humanity watched one of their own stand up to aliens who claimed to be superior. Jake woke up in the medical bay 30 hours after the incident. His entire body ached. The doctors told him he had torn muscles, strained ligaments, and temporary damage to his cardiovascular system. The gravity pressure he had endured should have killed him. The fact that he survived was being called either a miracle or proof that human stubbornness could overcome biology. Captain Hayes visited him on his second day of recovery. She pulled a chair beside his bed and sat down heavily. She looked tired, older than she had a few days ago. How are you feeling? She asked. Like I got run over by a cargo hauler, Jake admitted. But I'll live. How bad is it politically? Hayes sighed. Complicated. Earth government is in chaos. Half the politicians want to apologize to the Veteran, and try to salvage the relationship. The other half are calling you a hero and demanding we tell the veteran to leave human space. What do you think we should do? I think, Hayes said carefully, that you showed us something important. The veteran are powerful, but they're not invincible. They can be hurt, they can be surprised, they can be wrong. That's valuable information. Jake shifted in his bed, wincing at the pain. Have they contacted us again? 3 times. Archon Velmoth demands a formal apology, and your immediate arrest for assault. Commander Siesh, his second, has requested something different. She wants to speak with you directly. That was unexpected. Why? She won't say, but I approved it. She's coming aboard in an hour. I thought you should know. After Captain Hayes left, Jake tried to prepare himself mentally for another encounter with the veteran. The medical staff helped him into a clean uniform and gave him stimulants to stay alert despite his injuries. He refused a wheelchair, insisting on walking to the meeting room under his own power. It hurt, but after everything that had happened, showing weakness now seemed wrong. Commander Siesh arrived alone without guards or weapons visible. She was smaller than Velmoth, but still towered over the humans. Her crystalline skin was a darker shade, almost black with silver highlights. She moved with a grace that suggested perfect control over her powerful body. Jake sat across from her at a small table, with Captain Hayes and Dr. Klein present. Sophie had insisted on being there too, despite her own injuries. Siesh studied Jake for a long moment before speaking. You are recovering well. Thank you for your concern, Jake said, keeping his tone neutral. It is not concern, Siesh corrected. It is curiosity. You should be dead or permanently damaged. Instead, you sit here functional. Your species is more resilient than initial assessments indicated. Dr. Klein leaned forward. Commander Siesh, may I ask why you requested this meeting? The veteran's large eyes moved to the scientist. To understand. Understanding is the foundation of proper hierarchy. When a species does not behave as predicted, the hierarchy must be re-evaluated. You mean we don't fit neatly into your ranked system? Sophie said. Correct. Archon Velmoth believes this is temporary confusion. He thinks humanity will accept its position once you understand the consequences of refusing. I am not certain he is correct. Captain Hayes exchanged glances with Jake. What makes you uncertain? Siesh's skin flickered through several colors, a sign of complex emotion. I have studied 47 species integration into the Veteran Empire. All followed predictable patterns. Strong species resisted initially but joined after seeing benefits. Weak species submitted quickly to gain protection. Humanity does neither. Maybe because we see a third option, Jake said. We don't have to join your empire or submit to you. We can just remain independent. Dangerous option, Siesh warned. The galaxy contains threats you cannot imagine. Species that view humanity as food, as slaves, as resources to exploit. The Veteran Empire has enemies. Without our protection, you would face them alone. We've survived alone for thousands of years, Sophie pointed out. On one planet, isolated, Siesh countered. Now you venture into space. Now you are visible. Predators will come. Dr. Klein adjusted his glasses nervously. Are you threatening us, Commander? No, warning you. There is difference. Siesh paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. Archon Velmoth will report to the Veteran Council. He will recommend either forced integration or isolation. If isolation is chosen, the Empire will withdraw all contact. Humanity will be marked as hostile. No trade, no technology sharing, no protection. When predators come, we will not interfere. And if forced integration is chosen? Captain Hayes asked. Siesh's expression was difficult to read, but her tone held warning. Then veteran military forces will occupy key human installations. Your governments will be given choice. Join peacefully with limited autonomy or be conquered and placed under direct control. Resistance would be brief. Our technology is centuries beyond yours. The room fell silent. Jake felt anger rising again, but he forced it down. Anger had its place, but so did strategy. You're not here just to warn us. What do you really want? The veteran commander regarded him with what might have been respect. I want to avoid both outcomes. Forced integration creates resentment. Isolation wastes potential. Your species demonstrates unusual qualities, that gravity resistance, that refusal to submit even when logic demands it, that aggression in the face of superior force. These traits have value. What kind of value? Sophie asked suspiciously. Military value, Siesh said bluntly. The Vethran Empire is vast, but we have enemies. The Krell swarm in the outer regions, the Shade Collective in the core territories, dozens of smaller threats. We fight constantly to maintain order. Your species would make excellent soldiers. Jake almost laughed. So instead of servants, you want us as warriors? How is that better? Soldiers are not servants, Sayesh explained. In Vethran culture, warriors hold high status. They are respected, well-resourced, given autonomy in combat situations. If humanity entered the Empire as a warrior species, your position would be elevated. Not equal to Vethran, but far above laborer species. Captain Hayes stood up, her face showing controlled anger. You're still talking about hierarchy, about ranking us. We would still be beneath you in your system. Yes, Sayesh admitted without shame, but hierarchy is unavoidable. Even among humans, you have leaders and followers, commanders and subordinates. The question is not whether hierarchy exists, but where you fit within it. We fit at the top of our own hierarchy, Jake said firmly. We govern ourselves. We make our own choices. That's not negotiable. Sayesh's skin shifted to a pale blue, an expression Jake couldn't interpret. Then we have a problem. Because the Vethran Council will not accept humanity as equals. No species has ever been offered equal status upon first contact. It must be earned through centuries of proving worth. How do other species earn it? Dr. Klein asked. Through exceptional service to the Empire. Through technological innovation that benefits all. Through military victories that expand our territory. Through cultural contributions that enrich our civilization. It takes time, sometimes thousands of years. Sophie shook her head. You're asking us to be second-class citizens for generations in the hope that maybe someday, our great-great-grandchildren might be considered equals. I am offering you a path, Sayesh corrected. Without this path, you have only forced submission or dangerous isolation. Jake stood up, ignoring his protesting muscles. Commander Sayesh, I appreciate that you're trying to find a middle ground, but you're still not hearing us. Humanity won't accept being ranked beneath anyone. We've fought too many wars, survived too many hardships, achieved too much to bow to aliens who show up and demand we know our place. Even if refusal means your extinction, Sayesh asked quietly. Even then, Jake said, because living free for a short time beats living as a slave forever. The Vethran commander stood as well, her massive form making even standing Jake seem small. But she didn't look angry. If anything, she seemed almost sad. I believe you. That is what makes this tragic. Your species has potential, but your pride will destroy you. It's not pride, Captain Hayes said. It's principle. Humans believe every sentient being has inherent worth, regardless of strength or ability. We won't join a system built on the opposite belief. Sayesh moved toward the door, then paused. I will report this conversation to the Council. I will recommend a third option, though I do not believe they will accept it. What option? Jake asked. Extended observation period. We leave humanity alone for now, but monitor your development. If you survive the challenges of an unaligned species, if you prove strong enough to stand independently, perhaps in time the Council would reconsider. It is not much, but it is all I can offer. After Sayesh left, the four humans sat in exhausted silence. Finally, Sophie spoke. So we just turned down the only protection available and basically dared the universe to come at us. Looks that way, Jake agreed. We're going to die, aren't we? Sophie said, but she was almost smiling. Probably, Jake admitted, but at least we'll die free. Captain Hayes looked at both of them. 6 months passed in a blur of activity. Earth's governments, after weeks of heated debate, made their decision. Humanity would stand alone. The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was clear. Most humans, when faced with the choice between comfortable servitude and dangerous freedom, chose freedom. Jake spent those months recovering and training. His body healed, but the experience left marks. He tired more easily, had recurring pain in his joints, and the doctors said he would deal with these effects for the rest of his life. The price of standing when he should have fallen. But Jake didn't regret it. Every time the pain flared up, he remembered the look on Velmoth's face when a human refused to kneel. That memory was worth a little permanent damage. The Discovery returned to Earth orbit, and Jake found himself reassigned. The military promoted him to full commander and gave him a new role, liaison to the newly formed Alien Contact Division. His experience with the Vethran made him valuable, even if that experience mostly consisted of attacking their leader. Sophie worked in the same division now, helping to develop training protocols for future contact situations. She walked with a slight limp, another permanent reminder of the gravity test. She joked that they were the broken but unbeaten club. The veteran had withdrawn from human space as promised. Their ships disappeared. Their diplomatic channels went silent. For 6 months, it was like they had never existed. Some people began to hope that maybe the veteran had forgotten about humanity, moved on to other concerns. Jake knew better. Empires didn't forget. They were patient, that was all. He was proven right on a Tuesday morning. Every deep space sensor array lit up simultaneously. Ships were entering human space. Dozens of them. But they weren't veteran vessels. Jake was in a meeting when the alerts came through. He ran to the command center along with half the building. The main screen showed the tactical display. 30 unknown ships had appeared at the edge of the solar system, moving toward Earth at high speed. "What are they?" someone asked. "Not veteran," the sensor officer reported. "Different energy signatures, different hull composition. Running them against the database now." Jake felt his stomach sink. This was what SciFi had warned about. Other species predators coming to investigate the new spacefaring race. And humanity had no defenses except a few research vessels and some barely armed patrol ships. The unknown vessels were insectoid in design, all sharp angles and organic curves. They moved in perfect formation, like a school of fish or a flock of birds. No communication, no hailing signals, just steady approach. Earth's defense fleet launched. 20 ships, mostly retrofitted cargo haulers with weapons bolted on, against 30 unknown alien vessels with who knows what technology. It was barely a fight, more like a gesture, a statement that humanity would resist even when resistance was futile. Jake watched the tactical display helplessly. The human ships moved to intercept, positioning themselves between Earth and the invaders. The alien vessels didn't slow down. They just plowed through the defensive line like it wasn't there. But then something unexpected happened. New contacts appeared on sensors. Large ones. The signature was familiar this time. Veteran ships, 5 of them, emerging from faster-than-light travel directly between the alien fleet and Earth. The insectoid vessels stopped. For the first time, they broke formation, scattering like they had hit an invisible wall. The veteran ships didn't fire, didn't move. They just sat there, a barrier between the aliens and humanity. "What's happening?" Jake demanded. The communications officer held up a hand, listening to his earpiece. "Incoming transmission from the veteran flagship. It's Commander SciFi. She's asking to speak with you specifically." Minutes later, Jake stood in front of a holographic display. SciFi's image appeared life-sized, her dark crystalline skin reflecting the command center lights. "Commander Morrison," she said, "you appear surprised." "You're protecting us," Jake said, still processing it. "After we refused to join your empire after 6 months of silence, you came back to protect us. Why?" SciFi's expression was difficult to read, but her tone suggested something like amusement. "The Veteran Council debated your species for months. Ark and Velmoth argued for isolation or forced integration. I argued for something else." "What?" "A test. A real one, not the crude gravity displays Velmoth favors. I proposed we leave humanity alone and see what happens when predators come. If you collapsed immediately, begged for our protection, offered submission in exchange for safety, then Velmoth would be correct. Humans are just another weak species that needs to be managed." Jake felt anger stirring. "You used us as bait?" "Yes," SciFi admitted without shame. "But you surprised us again. Your defensive fleet is pathetic by galactic standards. Those ships would not stop the Krell scouts. But you launched them anyway. 20 ships against 30, with no hope of victory, and you still tried to fight." On the tactical display, the insectoid vessels were retreating. The veteran ships hadn't fired a single shot, but their presence was enough. The Krell, whatever they were, didn't want to challenge the veteran empire. "The Council is watching this right now," SciFi continued. "They see a species that refuses to submit even when outmatched. They see humans launching a hopeless defense rather than surrendering. This confirms what I reported. Humanity has warrior spirit." "So what happens now?" Jake asked. "You saved us this time, but will you be there next time?" "And the time after that?" SciFi's skin flickered through several colors. "The Council has approved my proposal. Humanity will be offered something unprecedented for a new species. Conditional alliance. What does that mean? It means you remain independent? You govern yourselves, make your own choices. But in exchange for veteran military protection from external threats, humanity provides military support to the Empire when called upon. Your soldiers serve alongside ours, not beneath us. You remain separate but aligned. Jake's mind raced. That's not the same as joining your empire. No, it is different. Alliance, not integration. Partnership, not submission. You are still not equals. But you are not servants either. You would be the first allied species in veteran history to maintain full sovereignty. Why? Jake demanded. Why change your entire system for us? For the first time, Sci-Esh showed something like emotion. Her voice softened slightly. Because you attacked Archon Velmoth. Because you stood when you should have fallen. Because you refused to accept what we told you was inevitable. The veteran empire is ancient, powerful, vast. But it has become stagnant. We follow the same patterns, the same hierarchies, the same thinking. Your species is different. You question everything, challenge everyone, refuse to accept limitations. She paused. We need that. The galaxy is changing. New threats emerge. Old enemies grow stronger. The Empire needs allies who think differently, who fight differently, who refuse to give up even when logic demands it. Humans are irritating, stubborn, and frequently suicidal in your tactics. But you are also effective. Jake looked at the tactical display. The Krell ships were gone now. Earth was safe, at least for the moment. I need to report this to my superiors. This isn't my decision to make. Of course. Take your time. Consider carefully. This offer will not be repeated if refused. The hologram flickered off. Jake stood in the command center, surrounded by officers who had heard everything. They looked at him, waiting for some kind of reaction. Well, Sophie said, limping over to stand beside him. That went better than expected. Jake laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. We nearly started a war, refused to join their empire, and somehow ended up with a better deal than anyone else in the galaxy. That's humans for you, Sophie said with a grin. Too stubborn to know when we're beaten. The next weeks were filled with negotiations. Earth's government debated the alliance proposal endlessly. Some saw it as a trap, others as salvation. But the footage of those veteran ships protecting Earth had an impact. The veteran could have let the Krell attack. They could have waited until humanity was desperate and then demanded total submission. Instead, they offered something reasonable. Jake testified before various committees and councils. He told them about Velmoth, about Sci-Esh, about the veteran philosophy. He explained that this alliance wasn't perfect, but it was better than the alternatives. And most importantly, it let humanity remain human. In the end, Earth accepted the alliance, not unanimously but by a clear majority. The agreement was signed aboard a neutral station, with representatives from both species present. Archon Velmoth was there, his arm fully healed. He still looked at Jake with what might be resentment, but there was something else there too. Not quite respect, but acknowledgement. Commander Sci-Esh became the primary veteran liaison to humanity. She would coordinate the alliance, manage joint military operations, and serve as the bridge between two very different civilizations. At the signing ceremony, Jake stood in his dress uniform alongside Sophie and other humans who had been present for first contact. Velmoth gave a speech about strength and hierarchy, barely acknowledging the unusual nature of this arrangement. Then Sci-Esh spoke. Her words were more honest. Today, the veteran empire recognizes humanity as allies. This is new for us. We are accustomed to dominance, to clear hierarchy. To knowing our place and everyone else's place, humans have shown us that perhaps the universe. 2 years after the alliance was signed, Jake Morrison stood on the command deck of the Joint Strike Force vessel Unity. The ship was a strange hybrid of human and veteran design, built together in orbital shipyards above Earth. It represented everything the alliance had become: awkward, experimental, but surprisingly effective. Jake commanded the human contingent, 300 soldiers from various Earth nations. They trained alongside 500 veteran warriors under overall command of a veteran officer named Archon Kethlon. The arrangement worked better than anyone expected, mostly because both species had learned to respect what the other brought to combat. Sophie served as Jake's second-in-command. She had transferred from navigation to tactical operations, finding that her experience with the veteran made her valuable in the field. Her limp was barely noticeable now, improved by veteran medical technology that Earth was slowly learning to replicate. The Unity was heading toward the frontier, toward a conflict that would test the alliance in ways no one anticipated. The Krell swarm, Those insectoid aliens that had first threatened Earth were expanding aggressively. They had hit 3 veteran colonies and 2 unaligned worlds in the past month. The Unity was part of a larger fleet being sent to stop them. Jake reviewed tactical data in his quarters when Sophie entered without knocking. They had worked together long enough that formality felt unnecessary. "You should see this," Sophie said, handing him a data pad. "Intelligence reports from the front. The Krell aren't just expanding. They're using new tactics, adapted from studying human defensive patterns during that first approach to Earth." Jake read through the report, his expression darkening. "They're using our own strategies against us." "Against everyone," Sophie corrected. "Apparently watching humans defend Earth gave them ideas about unconventional warfare. The Veteran are struggling because the Krell aren't fighting the way they used to." There was a certain irony in that. Humanity's stubborn defense had inspired alien insects to change their combat doctrine, and now the whole galaxy had to deal with more aggressive Krell. A message came through the ship's communication system. Archon Kethlan requested Jake's presence on the command deck. Jake and Sophie made their way through corridors that showed both human and Veteran engineering. The ceiling was higher than human ships needed, accommodating Veteran height. But the controls were designed for both species, with interfaces at multiple levels. Kethlan stood at the central holographic display, his crystalline skin a pale green color. He was younger than Velmoth, more willing to adapt to working with humans. He nodded as Jake approached. "Commander Morrison, we have new orders from the fleet. We're being sent to a planet called Threshold. It's a human colony, one of your newest settlements." Jake felt his chest tighten. "The Krell are attacking a human world?" "Apparently they view human colonies as softer targets than Veteran worlds. Less defensive capability, smaller populations. They hit Threshold 4 hours ago. The colony has maybe 8 hours before they're overrun." Sophie pulled up data on the colony. 3,000 colonists, mostly families. They have basic defenses but nothing that can stop a Krell assault. The nearest military force is 2 days away. "Except us," Jake said, looking at the navigation display. "How fast can we get there?" 12 hours if we push the engines," Kethlan replied. "But we're one ship. Intelligence estimates 40 Krell vessels in the assault force. This would be a suicide mission." Jake looked at the Veteran commander. "You want to leave 3,000 humans to die because the odds are bad?" Kethlan's skin flickered through colors, a sign of agitation. "I want to make rational decisions. Sacrificing one ship and 800 soldiers to delay the inevitable helps no one. It helps the 3,000 people who get to live a little longer," Sophie said, "maybe long enough for the rest of the fleet to arrive." "Your species' attachment to hopeless causes is noted," Kethlan said, but there wasn't real criticism in his tone. "However, I command this vessel, and I must consider what is militarily sound." Jake understood the Veteran's position. It was logical, tactical, by the book. Save the ship, regroup with the fleet, mount a proper rescue. The problem was that proper rescues took time, and time was something those colonists didn't have. "Request permission to speak freely." "Sir?" Jake said formally. Kethlan made a gesture that meant proceed. "You've worked with humans for 2 years now. You've seen how we fight, how we think. We don't do retreat well. We especially don't do abandoning our own people well. If you order this ship away from Threshold, the human contingent might follow that order. But we'll never trust you again, and this alliance will start breaking down from the inside." The command deck went silent. Other Veteran officers watched the exchange with interest. This was the fundamental tension of the alliance: Veteran logic versus human emotion. Kethlan studied Jake for a long moment. "Are you threatening mutiny, Commander?" "No, sir. I'm explaining consequences. You can order us away and we'll obey. But you'll lose something more valuable than one ship. You'll lose the thing that makes this alliance work. The belief that we actually care about each other." Sophie added quietly, "The colonists on Threshold, they're not soldiers. They're farmers, engineers, families. They went to that world because humanity is trying to expand, to grow, to be worthy of standing beside the Veteran as allies. If we leave them now, what message does that send?" Kethlan's skin shifted through several colors rapidly. Finally, he turned to his navigation officer. "Set course for Threshold, maximum speed." Relief flooded through Jake, but it was mixed with fear. They were really doing this. One ship against 40 Krell vessels. The next 12 hours would either become legend or a cautionary tale. The Unity pushed its engines hard. arriving at threshold in 11 hours. What they found was worse than the report suggested. The Krell had landed ground forces. The human colony's main settlement was surrounded, taking heavy fire. Defensive shields were failing. Krell fleet is in orbit, the sensor officer reported. 42 vessels. They've detected us. Kathleen studied the tactical display. We cannot fight them directly. We need a strategy that uses our advantages. Jake looked at the display, an idea forming. The Krell fight in formations, right? Tight groups, perfect coordination. It's their strength. Yes, Kathleen confirmed. Their hive mind allows flawless tactical unity. Why? Because humans don't think like that, Jake said, working through the plan. We're chaotic, unpredictable. What if we use that? Over the next 10 minutes, they developed a plan that was either brilliant or insane. The Unity would charge directly at the Krell fleet, broadcasting false sensor data to appear as a much larger force. Meanwhile, the human soldiers would deploy in small teams to the planet's surface, using guerrilla tactics to disrupt the ground assault. The Krell will see through the sensor deception quickly, Kathleen warned. Doesn't matter, Jake replied. We just need them confused for a few minutes. Long enough to deploy and make them think we're crazier than we actually are. Sophie laughed. That's your plan? Act crazy? It's worked so far, Jake said with a grin. The Unity accelerated toward the Krell fleet. The enemy ships broke formation, uncertain about the new arrival. In that moment of confusion, every dropship on the Unity launched toward the planet. 300 human soldiers fell through the atmosphere while 800 veteran warriors remained on the ship to engage the orbital forces. Jake led the first team down. The entry was rough, Krell fighters trying to intercept the dropships. They lost 2 transports before reaching the surface. 40 soldiers gone before the fight even started, but the rest made it. They landed outside the colony's defensive perimeter and immediately began hitting Krell ground forces from unexpected angles. Human soldiers used terrain, improvised explosives, and aggressive close combat tactics that the Krell weren't prepared for. The insects were stronger individually, but they relied on coordination in superior numbers. When humans started appearing from multiple directions, using buildings as cover, setting ambushes, they disrupted the Krell's tactical cohesion. Jake's team fought through 3 Krell positions to reach the colony's command center. The colonists were barely holding on, exhausted from hours of constant attack. When they saw Earth military uniforms, several started crying with relief. You came, the colony leader said, her voice hoarse. We thought no one would come in time. We're here, Jake replied. But we need to hold for another hour. Reinforcements are coming. It was the longest hour of Jake's life. The Krell adjusted to human tactics, began surrounding the human positions. Ammunition ran low, casualties mounted. But every minute they held was another minute the colonists lived. Above them, the Unity was taking a beating. Kathleen had pulled back from the Krell fleet after deploying the ground forces, using hit-and-run tactics to draw ships away from the planet. But there were too many enemies and too little time. Then, like Salvation arriving late but arriving nonetheless, the rest of the Alliance fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. 20 ships, half veteran and half human, appearing at the edge of the system. The Krell recognized they were now outmatched. In the strange logic of the swarm, they withdrew suddenly, abandoning their ground forces and fleeing into deep space. The battle was over.